What's going on, you loyal listeners? Thank you for tuning in to the L Squared podcast. I'm your host here, Luke Larson, and joining me today, as per the usual, my lovely and loquacious special guest who will be assisting me in leisurely launching you into levity, Old Legs.
Yeah! How's it going? How are we doing? Are you ready? Are you ready to talk unions? Are you ready to talk the Teamsters?
Oh, I'm ready. What do you think? Funny how? Am I a clown? Am I here to fucking amuse you, huh?
Am I here to amuse you?
That's what we're gonna try to do. We're gonna try to amuse these people, huh?
Yeah. And we gotta go all the way back. I just had coffee with him about half an hour ago.
I just had coffee with McCullough half an hour ago.
Should this just be the podcast?
That we just do
riffing on De Niro, Pacino, and Pesci for
and just do horrible
an hour and 10 minutes?
I would love nothing more to just do horrible impressions the whole time.
Yeah,
and that one, if I could say from Heat, Heat it's an all-timer, and that one's infamous for Pacino's one line where he says, "Yeah, but she got a great ass, right?" And Hank Azaria did an interview about a year and a half ago where they asked him about that, and he's like, yeah, we did 90 takes of that, and in every single one, Al was like, "Yeah, but she got a great ass, right? Yeah, she got a great ass though, right?" And just kept doing it. And he was just out of nowhere, Pacino was so frustrated with doing just went all in. And then, Hank was like, "That's my natural reaction." They put in there because he was just like, "Jesus Christ." That's what they put in. Yeah, Michael Mann, true American hero, that guy.
Yeah, I would argue that Heat is kind of a turning point for both of those actors, and kind of almost the end of an era
for both of them. Yeah, because that was 95.
You know what? Let's kind of save that because I wanna jump into maybe just the importance. I mean, a lot of the themes of what. So if you not, I guess we are doing a podcast here. So
yeah,
we're talking The Irishman today. And I think it's important that we do discuss just generally a legacy.
Okay.
So let's maybe table that for a second, because I think that'll transition in really well as we just kind of look at these guys and look at the scope of maybe their careers and what this all means. Because we're gonna be going deep today. You thought The Irishman was long? The Irishman podcast is gonna be double that.
We're going for 7 hours.
This is gonna be this is gonna be filibuster territory. We're gonna be blocking some legislation here with this shit.
Yeah, so, for sure.
I don't know. Why don't you get us started here with your thing.
What I do.
Introduce the movie.
So, The Irishman is the newest film from Martin Scorsese, a Netflix original, and the IMDb plot synopsis, very easy, no misspelled words this time, just one easy sentence. A mob hitman recalls his possible involvement with the slaying of Jimmy Hoffa. That's the whole thing. There
you go.
So,
do you think that was the elevator pitch?
I don't know. It was just, Marty was, they were like, "Marty, please, do anything you want. Is there anything you want to do? Please. We'll give you however much money you want. We'll give you much time. You can do literally whatever you want." And then he just was like, "I kind of feel like doing this." And they're like, "Great, let's do it."
Do you think that was a sentence at some point? And then Marty's like, "I got 3.5 hours."
Just instantly. Yeah.
I have some thoughts.
It really would not surprise me at all. But this was based on a book. Based on the book, I Heard You Paint Houses, I believe.
Yes. Which is important. Let me just start right there. Did you read the book? Did you know what this was based off of, or any sort of kind of backstory? I don't know how prepared you were coming into this.
Well, not very prepared. No, I didn't read the book. I knew a little bit of. I knew he's a fraud. Show your ticket stubs. He can't do it. So, I mean, I knew that phrase. I knew of the book. I had never read it. I knew a little bit about Jimmy Hoffa because I actually was part of the Teamster Union for a while.
Wow.
I paid my dues literally when I worked for UPS.
You know trucks.
I know trucks. I guess so. Yeah. I mean, when I worked for UPS, I was part of the Teamster Union, which was very cool. It was whatever. That's just a fun little. It wasn't even fun. It was just a footnote that I threw in to get us off course here. But no. So going in, I just knew that it was Scorsese's new mob movie, and he was gonna get the whole band back together. He was getting Bobby, he's getting Allie, he's getting Joey, he's getting Harvey. So it was like he was gonna get all his guys.
Ray Romano.
Yeah, and Ray Romano as well.
The Mount Rushmore right there.
Yeah, right. So
I'll take those 5 against,
but Ray Romano has had a great year. Has had a great couple years. These last couple years, he's been fucking great. He's been killing it. I think he was maybe my favorite part of Vinyl. He was, great in Get Shorty, and he was really good in this. And I'm like, I love Ray Romano coming back and doing these roles. I really do.
Okay.
But so all I knew about it was that it was just. And the big return of Joe Pesci, because Joe Pesci was retired, hadn't acted in a long time. And, you just hear, Marty's going to be doing a new movie. He's getting all these guys. That was enough for me. I was like, yeah, I'm going to see it, And I don't know if I was... Well, what did you think going into it?
So, I didn't know anything either about the film. More or less just kind of the buzz coming in that it's I actually didn't even know it was like a mob movie until like about a week before it came out.
They're going to say like until an hour and a half in.
Yeah. I was like, wait, what? I've been basically just doing this thing where I just kind of like throw on whatever Marty did and just kind of, see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't know what Silence was about. I knew what the Bob Dylan documentary was about.
Yeah.
Bob Dylan.
Probably could have guessed that.
Yeah, so I mean, I knew none of the backstory. I didn't know until even after the movie, after I'd started like hearing about it on other stuff, that it was an actual true story. Maybe, kind of.
Right.
It feels like the claims that the Frank Sheeran character played by Bob De Niro were pretty well
documented. Yeah, for sure. Lots of them.
That he was involved at all with the Jimmy Hoffa killing.
Right. Like, about the only thing we can prove is that he was the president of that one sect or whatever, and that of the union, and that's about as much as you could really prove. Which led to, I guess we'll just. It led to. I think that kind of made the movie interesting to me. Whereas most of the way through it, I was just kind of sitting back, it's just another Scorsese mob movie. They're just slick, fun to watch, just like, oh yeah, this is cool, like whatever, going through it. But then I think what made me really like this movie and have it stand out to me was the ending of it. So after hours and hours of going through all this shit, and just like, it was good, very good the whole time, very fun, But then the ending is really what drove it home for me, because at the end, it's just Frank being an old dude, just being alone,
right,
and being lonely, and really, not living glamorously.
Yeah. So this is essentially, it's kind of weird because it's almost a little bit meta, and maybe, I assume this was intended, but
yeah,
I would argue that the number one criticism of Scorsese is that he tends to glamorize his characters, his mobsters, or whoever it may be, Jordan Belfort, makes it look fun. Yeah. Makes it look enjoyable, and he essentially just made this the antithesis to that entire criticism here with this film.
Totally.
Which is really interesting, and it's definitely stuck with me, because if you flick this on, you're not going to end up in some kind of existential state where you're just kind of like wondering about everything. You're gonna start thinking about it, thinking about the end.
Yeah, and
what's your legacy? What is it all worth? You know?
And it worked into it too with, like you said, there's a lot of things that were, a lot of claims refuted, and it could definitely just easily be the ramblings of a lonely old man who just wanted someone to listen to him because he was not close with his family, and just wanted to make all this up. And it kind of, the story lends itself to, to be open to that as well. But one of the things I loved too is throughout, when you met a new mobster, a new character, it said their name, and then it said how they died, when they died, like this guy, shot 6 times in the back of his head, 1980, outside his apartment or whatever, so it was like, well, in the heyday of glamorizing and everything, like your first introduction to him is like, this guy looks cool, and this is what happens to him, and and almost every single mobster that we saw didn't make it out of that life. This Frank, if his story is to be believed, he's one of the few that survived it and grew old, and no one was around to enjoy it with him anymore. And then it really makes you think, like, was it worth it? Like you said, having that existential crisis.
Yeah. And I think it's not just like the kind of end of life. You have this one guy who makes it through and doesn't get whacked. But the totality of everything, I don't think at any point in particular, especially with the De Niro character, where you're looking at this guy's life and you're like, wow, this guy's made it. He just seems pretty middle of the road. The whole way through.
That's true. Yeah.
There's no mountains of cocaine. There's no, Jordan Belfort yachts. He's not, taking a bunch of Quaaludes and crashing a Lamborghini or something like that. So it never feels, you don't feel that excess.
Right.
And without that excess there, it's like shit. Like, was it really worth it to just like sell my soul for basically nothing? Like,
right.
he basically loses his family, he loses all of his quote unquote friends, kills his best friend. And what is it all worth? What is it for? Was it, like
yeah, really. That's a great point, because he was around people having high highs and doing these crazy things, but he never got there himself. He was just an enforcer, basically. And was it worth it? No, I mean, I don't think so. And I don't know if he does either, but maybe, I don't know. That's I think that's the whole question of the movie, and you have to walk away with that, because if he didn't do that, if he didn't get into that lifestyle, would he still be driving trucks? You know, would he still be delivering meat? Would he just be some boring laborer, just kind of... He would probably be he would be a union member, probably somewhere, and just kind of going from job to job. Would he have ended up in the same place anyway? You know, you would think he'd have a better chance of being closer with his family. But at the end of the day, you know, what if he just lived a boring life and then ended up sad and alone in a nursing home anyway?
Yeah, right. I would argue that he has a substantially better chance of having a relationship with his family, his daughter in particular, the Anne Paquin character.
Yeah.
Towards the end, had he not had involvement in organized crime and made a living off of painting houses.
Yeah, that was probably fairly obvious.
But I think that's the that's kind of like the kicker, right? Is his justification throughout is very, you know, up until the very end when he's talking to the police and he's like, nah, you know, I'm not doing this whole thing. I'm not going to talk to you guys. But it seems as though he pushes this idea that because he was a veteran in the war and because he killed people, that he, you know, he could use that same justification to follow orders. You know, the minute he's kind of makes this connection between what he was forced to do as, you know, a soldier in World War II and what he kind of learns this niche, you know, working with Joe Pesci's character. I feel like that's his justification ultimately. Is he's like, well, you know, it's this thing where I just follow orders. I'm just a guy, you know. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point. He does bring that up a lot, and you know, maybe. Yeah, I mean, there could have been some PTSD there. Obviously, that was before, you know, people knew what that was, and maybe it could have been, but yeah, maybe he had an urge to do those things, and it just was easier when someone was like, "Hey, go do it," because then he probably didn't feel guilty about it because he's like, "Well, they told me to do it. I'm just following orders. You know, I'm not the guy. I'm not making those calls. You know, I'm not doing that stuff." But I don't know. That's definitely interesting. Here's a question for you. Did you? Because I have some thoughts, but I think I would have taken more Joe Pesci and his relationship with Joe Pesci than his relationship with Al Pacino as Hoffa. I think. So,
I think without a doubt Pesci wins the movie.
Totally, 1,000%.
Pesci was, and maybe that's just the way that the character is written, but he's so fucking cool.
He is.
And it's the closest you get to like that kind of admiration that you feel in Goodfellas or Casino or The Godfather, where you're like, God damn, that guy, like, that's the guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Pesci is so good. I think it's hard. I think just the way the film is structured, it's difficult to do the Pacino thing because Jimmy Hoffa is so insufferable, like especially towards the end. Like,
totally.
God, I feel like there's at least 4 scenes where he's like, well, you know, like, give him a call and see if you can straighten this out. Talk to the guys, and they said this is bad news for Jimmy Hoffa. He's got to listen, you know, he's got to straighten up. And it's like over and over. It's just like I'm like I get it. Like,
yeah, I get
he's
it.
Not gonna listen. He's gonna do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, I feel like we could establish that in just one scene.
That's
and
very
the next
true.
It kind of extends out.
Yeah, that's very true.
Not that I didn't like it,
right?
Or like that aspect of it, because I personally, so a big conversation around this movie is that it's too long. I don't think so. It's interesting in the format that it was released. I was kind of going to ask you kind of how you consumed this. For me, having this being released on Thanksgiving, I wanted to watch it on Thanksgiving, but then I realized we have family and 4 to 6 year olds running around, and I'm like,
Sure.
yeah. And then you look at the runtime, and it's like, oh Christ! It's like, what am I gonna? Am I gonna go into the bathroom and watch this on an iPad for 3 hours? Like, how am I gonna do this? So,
right.
It did take me a couple sittings. I had to wait until people fell asleep, and then I fell asleep, and then I woke up the next morning and started it, and then stopped and went to lunch and came. So it was legit 3 episodes for me. And I didn't hate that, but I feel like it kind of changed the vibe and how you, as opposed to just kind of like going through all in one push. What do you think?
Well, I went through it all in one push.
You watched it as is.
As is. Yeah, there's no live tweeting during it.
No live tweeting.
I got home and it was probably about 4:30. I put it on and it was done at 8 o'clock, and I was like, wow, that was just my whole evening. It just took up the whole thing. But it was good. I mean, it didn't, like you said, like it's just in that. I also didn't think it was too long, and it focused on things that, because it's so long, there were things you could cut this movie down, obviously, into a 2-hour movie or an hour and a half movie, and just have like one tweet I saw was
we could have like maybe 3 less cigarette breaks.
Yeah, right. But like, there's one tweet I saw that he said, "The Irishman is superior to Goodfellas because it didn't cut out all the time checking into hotels and eating breakfast like Goodfellas. Goodfellas only kept the interesting stuff," or something like that. It was so funny. But it was an interesting aspect of it, because you felt like when they're on those long road trips, you feel like you're on there too, and it kind of drags along, and showing that those guys did also have the mundanity of day-to-day life as well was definitely interesting. And it was cool to see like how all those puzzle pieces fit together that we didn't really get to see before, especially in that way. So in one sitting, it was long, obviously, but it didn't, like, there's one, what's it called? Once Upon a Time in America.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so that's a 4-hour movie, the original or whatever, all cut together, whatever you want to say, the director's intended vision, and hot take, that shit sucks, but it's just like, it's so long, and it feels so long, and it feels just like so much excess and not interesting, whereas like this, both Rob De Niro movies, oddly enough, but this was just like easy, smooth, slick the whole time. And even showing the mundanity of opening a box of cereal at a hotel in the morning was interesting and just fun to be there with them, But I'm also the guy who I've watched, I think it was in total a 13-hour documentary on the American mob. I've watched that 3 or 4 times. So like, it's not like something I get bored with, so it maybe it would be too much, for somebody else, but yeah, just in one sitting I was fine. I wasn't bored. I wasn't whatever. And it kind of jumps around a little bit non-linearly as well, which helps. It just kind of breaks up the pace of it a little bit, which is nice. But yeah, lots of fucking shit happens.
Yeah, I agree. I liked it all. I would not cut it.
Well, yeah,
I get it. It's long.
It's like, you take the universe and you cut it in half. You put it into a tube. Well, I wouldn't put the universe in a tube.
But so yeah, so, I mean, there's a distinction between. I wanted to kind of like separate and make like draw a line between what movies are too long and what movies are just right, and what movies deserve to be long as shit.
Yeah.
Like for instance, It Too, way too fucking long. Okay,
it's true. Stepped over the line.
Abominable. Okay.
Yep.
Too long.
Over the line.
You should not. It should not take 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes to kill a fucking sewer clown. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No.
True.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is not that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's the nuance that you talked about, the quirks that these guys have. The Jimmy Hoffa is the ice cream thing.
So great. Not even his wife could smoke in the car. Like, yeah.
All that stuff. That's like earned. That's the Scorsese little sprinkle on top that you get from these stories, and that's kind of what makes it feel authentic. And it deserves that time to just kind of sit with these characters and really get to know them before you see how it all turns out. So
yeah, because The Wolf of Wall Street was 3 hours, wasn't
it? Deserves 3 hours.
Yeah, totally. And that was tight. That movie's fucking tight. There is no wasted space in that story at all.
It's that movie is like running a 5K. It's exhausting watching that movie in a great way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't subscribe to the Irishman is too long, but it's interesting, curious having it being immediately on this platform where you can break it up, you can take breaks.
Do you think
life gets in the way? If you're in a movie theater, you're just fucking in it,
Yeah.
Regardless of what's happening in the outside world. So that's kind of
do you think
this interesting dynamic.
I thought it was interesting that he chose to put it on Netflix because Scorsese hasn't necessarily been like the biggest fan of streaming services and the home theater
new stuff.
Or just
anything from like 2002 on. I feel like Scorsese just hasn't really been a fan of. But I'm totally fine with that. He's like 80 fucking years old.
Exactly.
Like,
he's an old man. What do you expect?
He's so old. Like, I don't. Like, could you imagine like thinking like I guess I'm not sure if like if you still have your grandparents or not. If you do, like God bless them.
I got both sets.
Like, I think of my grandpa like making a film, like making like a multi-million film, and I'm like, that's fucking insane. I can't like picture my dad making a film like that's crazy,
I never put it in that prism, but that's
the idea that this guy is making something that's even like worthy of conversation, like it's even like people are even raising the question, is this his best film? Like this is insane, right?
Yeah. I've never thought about it like that, but I can just trying to picture either one of my grandpas that's pretty far fetched. I mean, I can't.
It's incredible. He's a master. It's like this thing where it's like, and it's crazy because it's not even like this narrative of like the master returns to show us one more time that he still has it. He's been working, right?
Cool J, don't call it a comeback.
Yeah, no, it's just a steady stream of stuff. And
I think that people were maybe expecting that decline to happen when he did Hugo, because Hugo was the kind of his foray into animation, and he said he made that movie for his grandkids because he was like, well, he just kind of realized my grandkids can't really see any of my movies. So he made that, and it was, I have never seen it, but then I think that's kind of when people are like, all right, well now he's just gonna kind of Francis Ford Coppola it and just make wine, and he might fart out a couple more shit movies that he doesn't really give a shit about, and just kind of and go from there. But then, nope, he didn't. He ramped it up even, and he is, like you said, he's never not been at the top of his game. And for a guy that's done as much cocaine as he has, I'm surprised that his heart is still going. And if you listen to him talk, he is still as neurotic as ever, and just like he talks, he's still
very available,
very, very available. Yeah, it just he still talks at 300 words a minute. I mean, it's ridiculous. So we could
get him on. We choose not to.
Yeah, he's asked
not
us.
Not necessarily. We like to kind of we respect the format of the show, but he's available.
He's just sitting around. He's ready to do it. It's something to be said. I mean, like George Miller. That was more of a comeback when he did Fury Road. And that was another one where it was like, holy shit, like, this guy can still do it. But George Miller took a break.
That's the example of, the master
coming
returns.
Back.
Like, he still has it type deal. But yeah, I guess, so that's the Scorsese thing. Do you want to get into, so Pesci's a little less interesting just because he's just kind of been done. And I think he's totally fine with that, but just talking like De Niro and Pacino and just legacy, and I know there's been thousands and thousands of words and probably even more podcasts talking about these two. But what are your impressions? Who are you picking? Who are you team? Are you team De Niro or are you team Pacino? Not to like boil it down to some like simple, stupid terms, but when you just look at the whole thing, like just looking at, thinking about that scene in the retirement home, and it's like, what are the highlights for you? Who's more indispensable for you? Like, who could you not live without, Pacino or De Niro, if you had to pick?
That's really, really, really hard, obviously. That's why you asked the question. Man, that's tough, because I think that, and what makes it tough as well is that, like we kind of started saying at the beginning of the episode, the last 20 years of their careers have not been a lot of highs for either of those guys.
No. And it's weird because I don't feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I haven't thought about this enough and I'm just kind of like workshopping this take in my head, but I don't think there's like a clear-cut favorite, right? There's not it's like, wow, it's clearly Pacino, right? Or it's, no, it's clearly De Niro, like he has the superior career. Like,
I think that...
is that the case, or I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a time when there might have been a more clear-cut answer, because I feel like De Niro is the safer pick. I think most people would pick De Niro, but maybe I'm wrong about that. But I feel like for me, I think Al Pacino is the one that I would have a harder time not. Man, that's tough. But I mean, if I had to pick one, I would pick Pacino, just because like he just has that fucking intensity. And even when he's in shitty movies and he's phoning it in, it's fine. But what I like about him is that he's less of like Rob De Niro and Harrison Ford kind of are. I think they're kind of similar style actors, where they can just kind of be the cool guy, where they can just kind of lean back and just play it cool, and people respect them for it and like it, and they can just kind of pop the collar of their shirt and squint a little bit, and then I was gonna say Brad Pitt too, but Brad Pitt has done interesting stuff. But Pacino is the guy who's really like, he takes a lot more, I would say, a lot more interesting characters, and he doesn't have a cool like guy vibe. He's got a weird cracked out. He's got those crazy eyes and the big beak nose. He can't just like fade into just being like, oh, I'm just a cool guy. He's he's manic and crazy, and he has that intensity, you know. So I think I would go Pacino.
Yeah, it's close for me because I feel like De Niro has a little bit more range, and this is maybe just like a product of that career arc.
Mm-hmm.
Because he can do comedy in the way that Pacino can't, and like it's not great, but it's okay, it's passable. Whereas like if Pacino is ever doing anything comedic, it's more or less like the joke is Al Pacino doing comedy, right?
Yeah.
It's not actually like written as comedy. It's funny because it's Al Pacino.
Right.
Whereas De Niro has this other gear where he can do the Fockers, he can do like Analyze That.
Yeah, I was gonna say if Pacino had an Analyze This and Analyze That, then it might be closer. But no, that's a good point. Yeah.
But it really is. It's this wild like their careers mirror each other so close. Because I would argue, like maybe Insomnia, like 02 is kind of like the last really good film that Pacino has done, and then De Niro, maybe it's like Ronin.
Yeah,
it's probably like 98. So it's
and Ronin close. Like isn't great. It has like one great scene, I would argue, but yeah.
You know, but then other than Heat, it's like kind of done.
Yeah.
For both of them.
Yeah.
As far as just like being like
the
supreme
stars,
number one, like can't miss kind of dudes,
right? Blue chips.
But it's crazy. You go through the whole thing, and it's like they have these just like streaks through the 70s, 80s, and 90s that are just like, oh my god! Like it's like I don't know how you really could pick. You know, you have it would be hard. I don't know. Yeah.
So I'm gonna run through.
I might lean a little bit more Pacino, but it's close.
So I think this will be interesting, hopefully. But I'm just gonna look through like Pacino and De Niro's IMDb since 2000, and
no. So you're supposed to just name films, and the audience will just
automatically
ensue that you just know these things.
I see.
Right? It's like obviously we have a movie podcast together. Of course, I know The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle came out in 2000. Like
right, man, the
listener clearly doesn't know that, but we know.
Clearly, yeah,
we know.
Right. Pacino, not a lot of good stuff. I just did a quick once over, and there's nothing.
So we're doing this in real time.
Yeah. Yeah, De Niro, he does have the Fockers and the Meet the Parents, you know, that's kind of in there, but other than that, there is not a lot.
Post the Fockers, he does this thing where he shows up and he's not really featured, but he's like charming, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's incredibly charming in the like Silver Linings.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But it's not like he's never really featured again.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that is like you said, they mirror each other. Analyze That and Insomnia both came out in 2002. And you can argue that was, because even in Meet the Fockers and Meet the Parents, yeah, like you said, he's a charming side character. And that year was kind of the last year when they were both the stars of a good movie. And before that, it kind of went down. And Pacino kind of came from more of, I don't know, he was a theater actor, and made his way through. But these two didn't talk for a long time. They had a beef through the 80s, I believe, because I believe it. In fact, if I remember right, it started on.
I mean, it was Heat, right?
He
was the one. He was one. They're like, okay, these two are. Excuse me. They're doing it.
Yeah.
And,
right, because they hated each other for a long time. And then that famous scene in the diner, they weren't shot together. They had to shoot it separately because they wouldn't, is the story anyway. But, who knows?
So stupid.
Yeah, it is so stupid. That's so petty. Just shut the fuck up and just do it, you piece of shit. Yeah, and maybe Heat was just too good. Maybe that took all the gas out of their tank, Just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was a good exercise, Luke.
Thank you. It worked really well, didn't it?
It worked just as well
as we both thought it would when I pulled it up. I was hoping that there would be one or two that I could pull out that we forgot, but no, it was just exactly what we both thought it was going to be.
Right.
So, do you think you'll ever watch this movie again? Do you think you'll ever sit down and watch The Irishman again?
Potentially. Potentially as just maybe like an exercise of watching these films. I would say it's very much so less rewatchable than any of the other kind of Mount Rushmore pinnacle gangster films, but I think it's interesting. I would be curious to talk to somebody if this was like their first kind of foray into the genre. Because I feel like anyone who has anything to say about this film has seen all of them and is pretty well versed. Yeah. But it would be really interesting to see like what someone's take would be if they just like this is your first time into this and what do you think? Because,
it definitely would be. I don't know. Yeah, I think this might be the best or the most likely to be a background movie for Scorsese because it is so loose and free flowing that this might be one where you can just put it on the background and do other shit and not really have to pay that close attention to it because it isn't as tight, as a lot of his other ones. So maybe that's the legacy of this, is that he made the greatest background noise movie of all time. One thing that I think,
sure, he'd love to hear that.
I'm sure. Let's get him on. You know what? Let's rescind our decline of his.
We were talking and we're like, wow, this is the perfect film to fold laundry to.
This might be the best. Thank you so much.
I feel like, was that your intention coming in? To make something that, you can just kind of idly have on and not really, you can be on your iPad, you can be playing Farmville. It's a second screen experience.
Yeah,
I'm
really,
sure that would be great.
He would love it. That's
I
our
hope
poll
he's listening
quote
right now.
And that ends up on a poster somewhere. One thing I don't know if it'll age well or not is the de-aging CGI, which for the record I fucking hate. So it didn't work for me, man. I mean, I could tell the whole time it's the uncanny valley, but it looked fine.
I think it's fine.
Exactly, but I'm just like, I don't know, because like even when De Niro's supposed to be younger, he has. I hate it, as I've been very vocal about on this show. But like even when he's supposed to be acting younger and they smooth out his face, he still has like the hunchback of an old dude and he still moves like an old dude because he's an old dude, and I know it's not, And it's like, well, what would be better if you just got a younger guy that doesn't look anything like him and you just say it's him? Like, I don't know, maybe, I just don't, why even, I don't know. It just really bugs me. And I think that in a couple years, in let's say 5 years, I think that it's already going to start to look like shit. I don't know if it'll be like Scorpion King levels, but I feel like it's going to just like now it looks fine, but I think that in a few years we're going to be like, holy shit, what the fuck is that?
I don't know. I didn't really care. It takes a little bit of, I would say the first like 30 minutes or so, you kind of have to orient yourself to the separate timelines. But once you get past that, I think it's fine. It's not. It wasn't that distracting for me, and I didn't have as much of a problem with it as I feel like other people. I was gonna reference other people, but I'm like, wait, it's just us two,
it's just you're the only
I'm not
one.
like necessarily talking to a crowd here, but yeah, I don't know. I was fine with it. It's a little weird. I think it would be, I don't know, like, would this be like a cooler film if they went like Ridley Scott and like were blue Avatar men, like,
yeah.
Would that be awesome?
Yeah, totally.
Like,
no, but now, like, well, the problem is now, well, not the problem, but I guess, like, there was that big news story, and who knows if it's actually going to happen, but this production company released that they were going to be making a film with a fully CGI James Dean. Did you hear about that? Not to sound like Jay Leno, but did you hear about this? Did you know about this? Apparently.
But I don't know. That's just, it's like an animated film. I don't know. Like,
yeah, but it's not, though, because it's just dumb. Like, I don't want to be living in that world where, like, wouldn't that be cool if James Dean was in this movie? Boom, we'll just make him be in it. We'll just put a weird video game cutscene with just him, and then, and then it's just going to look like Beowulf the whole time. And then it's like, well, what, do you have other real actors?
Don't talk shit about Beowulf. I swam against Brecca for 9 days.
Yeah.
The last time he told this story, it was 7.
Wow. I did not expect that.
I love Beowulf. The Angelina Jolie spooky tale boobies have aged perfectly, I would argue, and there's nothing wrong with that movie. That's a perfect film.
Okay.
Interesting. I think this whole technology argument that you're trying to make here is kind of shitty.
Well, yeah.
I mean, like,
maybe
I
so.
get it, and it's just, but there's no like real stopping it. I mean, if it's a good film, it's a good film. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good and bad. I mean, we're gonna have Carrie Fisher in our Star Wars films for the next 20 years.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you gonna do?
Because I'm more of Kylo Ren with that. Let the past.
If the next Manchester by the Sea is CGI Affleck,
go. I don't know.
And it's just like, I'm down for that. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm so in.
Yeah, it's not a bad point. I just don't. I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It feels weird to me, but yeah, maybe I'm just old. Maybe I'm a boomer, and eventually they're gonna have to do.
We made it all the way back. We're hip with the times.
Yeah.
I was trying not to. I restrained myself. I'm like, hey, you're jumping into boomer territory here, but I'm gonna let you try and ride it out.
No, I know, it's good to admit it. Before it bubbles over. It could be that I'm just being a boomer about it. Sometimes you just got to look yourself in the mirror and say, do
I like Marvel movies?
Do I like Marvel movies?
Yes. Yeah.
Do I like is my taste in food getting more and more bland as I get older? Do I enjoy quiet time more? No, it's just, I don't know. I guess we'll see. No, that's the right attitude to have about it. If a good movie's a good movie, bar none, and if they can do that, then they can do it. And if a good movie is 3.5 hours with Scorsese and Pesci, and why is Harvey Keitel in this movie? Give him something to do. Come on. Like, why? Why do you have him in there for 2 scenes?
I was trying to think as we were prepping this, which is me just basically Googling The Irishman and clicking on IMDb. I'm like, did he die in this? Like, I was like, I can't even remember.
Yeah,
but he pretty much just kind of stares, right?
Yeah, he just sits at a table and stares
and whispers, and I'm like, fucking Harvey Keitel, man.
Yeah,
that guy. That guy.
I mean, I was fine with it, but it's
that
like,
guy's the best.
yeah, I was like, why? I don't, yeah, whatever. It just, anybody could have done that. Yeah, he was probably just available, just like Scorsese. He wasn't doing anything.
Right.
Hey, do you think you could play this part where you sit at a table and stare at a guy? Fuck yeah.
He was probably just at the same club that they happened to be shooting at. And Scorsese's like, pan to the left there, Keitel's
that's good.
got a deal going down.
He's got that thousand eye stare. Oh, that's going to be good. We got to get that on here. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But so go check it out. Give it a chance. All right. Sit through it. Take your time. Enjoy it.
Challenge yourself. And I'm going to challenge each and every one of our loyal listeners to
turn off your phone, but then turn it back on. Go to your Twitter app. Find me on Twitter at LukeLarson89. This podcast at L Squared Podcast. Facebook at L2 Podcast. Instagram at L Squared Podcast. We're on SoundCloud. We're going to be getting on Spotify, on all your favorite platforms. You won't be able to hide from us. We're coming for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to be like you two. You're going to download that new iPhone update, and you're going to have a new episode of L Squared just waiting for you, whether you want it or not.
It's going to open every time you open your phone.
Stuff.
And it's not just going to pick up where it left off. It's going to start from the beginning. So it's going to be huge. And you're going to have to listen to us many times. And you're not going to enjoy it. But it doesn't matter because we're making money.
Yep. Get out there. Rate and review.
Throw us some cash.
5 stars for the L Squared Podcast.
That's the only. We rig it so that you can't give it a different rating.
5 stars only.
5 stars only. That's going to be our production company.
Yes.